One channel, different shows, everything entertaining. Make a Path presents Let's Talk. Welcome to Make a Path Presents. My name is Ronny Haze, and today, let's talk Dead Living. Alright, Deadheads, this is a viewer-requested video. If you are a fan of The Walking Dead, and especially if you are a huge fan of zombie movies, books, stories, comic books, whatever, you will want to stick around to hear this. I have viewer requests for some more information on my Dead Patriots story, which the working title is actually Dead Living. However, the biggest chapter in the whole book was called Dead Patriots, so that's what I most often go with. And keep in mind, they're only working titles. Dead Living is just the one that I prefer to call it. But anyhow, I was asked by a bunch of people about giving just some ideas of what it was about, and I do have some information that I will give you. I will give you a part of the story, and this is actually a part of the story. Recently I'm working on removing this from the story, and a reason being is because if anyone's up to date on the Whispers, the story I had in my Dead Living was really similar to the Whispers, and it was their camouflage technique. However, in my story, it was more of a fear factor because they were a harmless group of people who used something so revolting as a way to scare off even the worst of criminals, you know what I mean? And the story I want to tell you is the short that I was actually cutting out. We have a main character, and it's late fall. He has like a homemade scarf or whatever wrapped around his face. He's in a field, like a clearing, and it's a section of the woods that's just solid trees, but there's a path in the woods, and in the path going along are these spikes, and on the end of the spikes are zombie heads. The eyes still moves, they're moaning a little bit, maybe some moving their jaws. Some of them are going to be where they aren't moving anymore. The main character is then going to look down at a sign. One variation was going to read, "Do not enter. If the dead don't get you, the living will." A second variation was going to be, "Do not enter. If the dead don't get you, we will." From that point on, the main character, obviously it's going to be written to where this is the first time he's ever come across this, but curiosity brought him there. So it led us to believe that these are the people maybe he was curious about or looking for. So the main character then turns around to leave, and the way it's written, at first he sees a floating torso, seemingly, of a walker, and the walker comes at him. He pulls a pistol, he shoots the walker in his head, but it proceeds forward, fills the gap only a foot or two away, and knocks him to the ground. Once he's knocked to the ground, he actually sees feet behind the walker, and then it is revealed that this is actually a walker shield. And the way I wrote it out was the walker shield was going to have spikes on it. There was going to be one spike through its torso, and then two spikes through the shoulders. This way they could chop the walkers in half or just use a top part of the walker. The spike would actually keep the walker on, so he could still move his hands and he's still animated. Now there's going to be a couple of sword-like spikes, and this is in development, so I have two different versions of the shield. The first version of the shield is just that the spikes holding the walker up would be like, and I got this idea from the dinosaur, the Triceratops dinosaur, how he has that plate and then he has those three spikes. That is what gave me the inspiration for the zombie shields. So then they would stick these zombies on them, and what makes it even more devastating, these shields are only held by the more of a warrior class in this village of people. Only the biggest guys have these shields. So if you see these shields, you're in trouble, because they're usually above 6 foot, 6'2", 6'3" preferably, and they're built. They're big. This was an idea I had put together, is about 10 years old, as well as a number of them. I have a list of some of my most exciting ideas I've ever had for a zombie issue. Anyway, the way it broke down was the village ended up being actually decent people. They were not messed up in the head. This is where it differs, I feel, from the Walking Dead comic, what Robert Kirkman is doing, because it seems like they have a messed up philosophy, so they're kind of touched in the head, the Whisperers story arc. My people, however, they were just so battered down by the evil people in this world. Like, they just kept constantly running into evil dictators that just wanted everything, took everything. I mean, they kept running into the governors, Negans, and Gareths out in this world. Constantly just barrages of bad people. So they created this as like a defensive offense, I guess is the best way to put it. And utilizing this in the story, the heroes, or the good group, was actually able to utilize what this group has done, this group that lives out in the woods. They use what they have done to actually attack one of their enemies. There's a lot more story involved. There is a military presence in my story that plays a very, very vital role. And again, it's also a slower collapse. So I do have time to change this story because, in fact, this part of the story, getting to this group that has evolved in this way, is actually about 7 or 8 years into the outbreak. I can probably say this without ruining too much, but you will see time skips. When I start promoting the story, to give you an example of a time skip, you'll see like a short story that, and I'm trying not to explain anything before and after, because I want people to start asking questions and talking with each other about what's going on, but I'm working on something now that's a little bit more sci-fi as a direction to go, where we see a little village that looks like the world today, but there's some differences that show us this might just be way far ahead. I mean, it's going to feel like it's 40-50 years ahead after the outbreak, and we're going to see someone die in a construction accident, and when they die, there's alarms that go off, and there's something that comes and kills that person as soon as they turn. That is, again, that's still in development, but I definitely want it to be different, and that is something else I'm working on. And that might seem wild because people think of the outbreak happening and the whole world collapsing. That is actually very different in the story I'm telling. The world does collapse, but it happens in pockets. You know what I mean? So there will be places that collapse a lot slower and for realistic reasons. We're going to follow a couple different pockets of people that eventually will collide. Some of them don't collide for a long time, so I'm really hoping people will stick through that and excitement can build for the story, because I had 20 years outlined. About 24 years was outlined, and I'm real excited about getting back into it. And that's, again, I stopped the story because of Robert Kirkman came out The Walking Dead, and then recently I started getting more into writing down my ideas for the story, and I pulled out the file and started getting back into it. And then when I read issue 132, I was still kind of leery. I was even talking about it in videos about my book or whatever, but something was still holding me back. And then once I read 132 and we discovered what the Whispers were, or maybe it was 131, I forget, but around that time in the comic book is when I sat down and said, this is a story that I absolutely love. And I'm like, I had something that was so incredibly similar that it gave me enough courage to say, no matter what happens now, I am going through with my story. I was on the right path with the story, I felt, you know what I mean? Even though they were completely different characters. Mine did it out of fear, and it looks like in Robert Kirkman's story, they did it out of like this twisted way of living, of adapting and evolving, not away from the walkers, but towards a way of life with the walkers, like cohabitating. If I could get 20 people that absolutely love the story, and that's as far as it goes, I don't mind having a hobby where I wrote something that 20 or 30 people either just completely loved or thought it was okay. I think that is fine with me. So I am going to do that. Anyone else who wants any information on the Dead Living or the Dead Patriots, again, it's a working title. I am going to start a Facebook page. Let me know in the comments down below if you are truly interested. And I know there's people who hate, you know, clicking on videos where people are showing their own personal creativity. But if you are truly interested in that, comment down below so I know how many people and I can gauge how many people. Because if it is a big amount, I will double up my man hours working on this thing. I am actually really thrilled that I had so many people asking about the Dead Living. I even had a couple people say they want to be a part of it as far as drawing. I do want to mention, I did kind of say this in a different video, I will not be accepting any ideas as far as the writing or the story. My lawyer did specify a couple things that I can and can't do, and that is one thing to completely stay away from. But it is completely fine if anyone wants to help with the artwork. I want to do promotional like posters or little comic skits, and that way I'm trying to get out there. If you're an up-and-coming artist, you're trying to get your name out there, I could credit you with the poster or picture or drawing. And I'm thinking, how fun would it be if I get a couple people that want to do a poster of the story, and then if a couple people want to do just in a like fan art of a comic page from the story, I think that would be so cool, and that's something that we can do together as a fan base. So guys, again, comment down below if you're interested, and the people that are interested, just hang out a little bit and we will get the page going, and I can email you some ideas of certain characters and how I want them to look, and then we could take it from there. Alright guys, again, I am actually thrilled that so many people asked me about my own personal project. Like, it is such an awesome feeling. Alright Deadheads, if you're interested in this project, go ahead and shout out down below. I'm done talking, it's your turn. Subscribe now.